Is hunting even worth the money? The short answer is probably not. You're likely never going to recoup the monetary value of what you spend on gear and tags by harvesting meat. But the long answer is a little more complicated. Hey everybody, Samuel Allred here. Welcome back to the Persistence Outdoors podcast. Every once in a while, I think about how much I'm spending on hunting. And I think it's especially front of mind towards the end of the year as my wife and I are thinking about how much we've spent, thinking about taxes, thinking about how much we're going to spend next year. And I'm always curious to know how hunting has impacted our grocery bill, right? If I'm successful and I bring home some meat, I want to know if that's saving us money or if I'm just spending way more money than I'm getting back in monetary value. So today I thought I would go through some of the costs associated with hunting. I want to go through hunting gear. I want to talk about the annual costs. I want to talk about camping gear and all of these things that if you're getting into hunting might cost you money and how that stacks up against the amount of monetary value you could get back by harvesting meat. I've had some friends who are getting into hunting, and once I start explaining the type of gear that I use and how much I've spent on different aspects of hunting, they look at me and they say, whoa, I thought hunting was going to save me money because I thought I would be able to get, 100 pounds of meat and then I wouldn't have to buy meat for half the year. And in reality, usually you are going to spend more on hunting than you are going to get back in monetary value. That's just the truth of it. That said, though, I still think it's worth it. And that's what we're going to talk about towards the end of the podcast. What, in my opinion, makes hunting worth the effort and worth the money, even if it doesn't show up on a balance sheet. Now, before we get into our topic for today, please take a moment to follow the podcast on whatever platform you listen on, and please also leave a 5-star review. Doing these things will help the podcast grow, and with your help, we can get more people outside and into hunting, which is what Persistence Outdoors is all about. And to all of you who do follow the podcast and support the podcast in other ways, thank you so much. It really helps to motivate me to do this week in and week out. And I'll keep doing my best to bring you helpful and enjoyable content every week. All right, let's start by talking about hunting gear and how much it costs. I've got a list here of some of my essential hunting gear, and some of this I have received as gifts. Other items I have bought myself. We're just going to go down the list and I'm going to tell you their approximate value. Now, I think you'll find that I'm a pretty mid-range or even low-end hunter when it comes to the price spectrum of hunting gear, but this is what I've spent and we'll just put it all out there and you can think about it and compare it to your experience with hunting gear. And if you're new, maybe this will give you sort of a ballpark for what you might expect to spend. So the first item is my rifle. My rifle cost me about $750 all told. So that was the rifle, the shipping, the taxes, and also the FFL transfer fee. So I bought a Bergara B14 30-06 hunting rifle. It's the hunter version, I think. So it's the green one. And I bought it from gunbroker.com. I was able to find a really good deal on this rifle because someone had overstocked it in a pawn shop. I think it was in Pennsylvania. And so I was able to get the rifle itself for closer to $550, which was a great deal on that rifle. It usually goes for about $200 more. But then I had to ship it and I had to pick it up at another pawn shop and pay the FFL fee. So often when you're shipping weapons, you can't just send them to your door. You have to send them to an FFL licensed dealer. It's a very common thing when you're trying to buy guns through the internet. And so that fee was something like $50. So all told, the rifle cost me about $750. And this is a very mid-range rifle, right? You're getting some of the benefits of just a pretty quality barrel. It shoots very well, but you're not getting any of the sort of nice features that you might get on a custom rifle or on something a little bit more expensive. It's basically just your Remington 700 rifle. It doesn't have an adjustable cheek piece or a vertical grip or a modular system of any kind. It's just pretty basic. Now, my scope cost me about $150. I think I got this off Amazon. It's a Burris Full Field E1. It's kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel as far as good hunting scopes go. I talked about it a little bit in my episode about choosing a rifle scope, and it's been perfectly serviceable. I've killed animals with it out to, 250 yards. It's been fine. It hasn't been my favorite. I might pay more for a better scope in the future, but it's definitely got me out hunting, and I've hunted with it for, 5 years now. So that's been great. In addition to my rifle and scope, I have a sling. It was maybe $25. It was not that expensive. Switching over, I have a shotgun that cost me about $300 all told. It's a Mossberg Maverick 88. That's about the cheapest shotgun that I would be comfortable hunting with. And I did a lot of research and I found this one, and people say it's basically a cheap version of a Mossberg 500. And so it's unlikely that you are going to find a good shotgun, like a good reliable shotgun in the $250 to $300 range. But that Mossberg Maverick 88 has held up. I've killed a lot of animals with it. It's not the most, ergonomic or nicest looking or anything, but it's done the trick for me. That being said, there's lots of people out there who hunt with much more expensive shotguns. Shotguns anywhere from $500 to $1,000. Recently, I bought a binocular harness, and honestly, I think I spent too much money on it. I spent about $100 on it. I got a Fish Hunt Fight binocular harness secondhand and spent about $100 on it. Those go for maybe $160 MSRP. And then this one that I got also had a bear spray holder and a rangefinder pouch. And so it was great. I mean, I use it all the time, and I've actually been really happy with using a binocular harness versus when I just had my binoculars on kind of a elastic little harness that bounced a lot. That was really annoying. But I still think I probably should have spent less and just asked for a better deal buying it secondhand. You can also find binocular harnesses for cheaper, and you kind of get similar features. It does basically the same thing. Sometimes I wonder if I've just watched too much of the Meat Eater TV show and gotten sucked into their marketing, but that's a different story. So binocular harness, around $100. My binoculars themselves were only around $90. I got them as a gift, so I had to look up the price, but they were only around $90. And you see binoculars out there for $350, and they're kind of marketed as the entry-level binocular, Mine are these bone collector binoculars. I think they're 10 power, and they've been great. They're really good. They're a little bit heavy, and the adjustment knob after a lot of hunting may be getting a little bit loose, but they've done everything I need them to do so far. And really, I haven't been in a situation where I've thought, oh, I really need better binoculars to hunt this effectively. Now, maybe I just don't know what I'm missing out on. That could be the problem. But my $90 binoculars have done me well, and I think I've got a couple more seasons in them. So I hope you're keeping track. By now, we've spent over $1,000. I will tell you the total of all this gear we go through at the end. Okay, my spotting scope. My spotting scope maybe cost around $200 to $300. It was a gift, and its price kind of fluctuates, just depending if it's on sale or not. That's not a lot of money for a spotting scope, and honestly, it performs like a less expensive spotting scope. You hear people and you watch videos of hunters spotting animals at 3 miles away, even 5 miles away, and mine really maxes out around 2 miles. I find it pretty effective at about 1 mile. And so that's fine for most of my hunting. I mean, really, I'm not at a point where I'm necessarily capable of seeing an animal 5 miles away and then making a play on it. I just don't have that experience yet. But my spotting scope, it's kind of low end. If I bought another one, I'd probably save up a lot more money to buy kind of a higher end one. But it has helped me spot animals. I've spotted bears with it. I've spotted elk with it. It's a little bulky, but once again, around $200 to $300. My backpack, I paid around $300 to $350 for. I can't remember exactly. I think I had some gift cards to REI, so I used those. And the backpack has been great. It's a Gregory Baltoro 65, so that's 65 liters. And it's done pretty much everything I want it to. Recently, it's been falling apart a little bit, and I realized on an elk hunt this October that I probably need a bigger backpack for really big bulls. But it's been really good, and for $350, I've got my money's worth out of it. The next thing that I always carry is my knife. My knife is this little buck knife. It has a rubber handle, a drop point blade. It is not complicated at all. It has maybe a 3-inch blade on it. And that knife was $40. It's pretty good steel. It holds an edge. I love it. Sometimes I wish I had a longer knife, but it's kind of cute and I like it. So I use it and I always have it in my backpack. Pretty great for $40. My hunting boots were honestly a splurge, and I bought them on sale. They cost me about $350. I've got the Crispi Nevadas uninsulated. They have been incredible in many ways. I mean, they keep my feet dry. They are practically bulletproof. They are about 8 inches high, so I can walk through a lot of water in them. They're so comfortable. I mean, even on the normal last, they are wide enough for my feet, and I have pretty wide feet, pretty wide and flat feet, but they're wide enough to be comfortable and just not crushing my toes all the time. So they've been wonderful. I do wonder if I needed to spend that much money on boots, and I kind of justified it thinking that if I get more seasons out of them than other cheaper pairs of boots, it will pay off in the long run. Now I'm kind of second guessing myself because I think I would like to go to a lighter, more flexible boot. I just find a more sort of natural pattern of walking with a more flexible boot to be more comfortable for me and desirable. So in the future, I may go to just cheaper boots that aren't as structurally sound, I guess, because I think they're going to be more comfortable and just deal with replacing them more often. But the Crispi boots for $350, it felt like a lot of money, but overall, I think it's been worth it. Okay, a few more things. I've got some hunting pants that were probably sold for around $125. I got those as a gift one year. Those hunting pants I wear on every hunt. So they've probably been on 100 hunts now, and they've been great. They're just kind of a synthetic hunting pant from First Light. I think their current offering that would be closest to what I have is the 308 hunting pant. They've been great. No complaints there. They've actually been a little bit tougher than I expected for such a light synthetic pant. When I'm hunting, I usually carry game bags or I have them in the car. I've got the lower end game bags that cost about $40 for a set. They're pretty big, but they're going to wear out after a couple of uses, and they're not great when you wash them. I have to wash them a couple times to get them clean again and get the smell out of them. So game bags for $40, they're fine. They do the trick. In the future, I might try and buy more expensive game bags, like a set of synthetic game bags that are really lightweight. They might cost me around $100, but they should be reusable. But that's what I've got right now. Now, a big expense if you're hunting bigger animals could be coolers. Coolers really range in efficiency, in usefulness, and also in price. So on the bottom end, you've got your Igloo coolers that you get at Walmart, and it's pretty much just a plastic bucket, right? And then on the top end, you have obviously Yeti coolers, which I think are overpriced. I think it's mostly just branding, but they do work. They do very well, and they're roto-molded, and you are getting a quality product that is going to work. So depending on where you choose to spend your money in that range of coolers, it could cost you a lot of money. It could cost you not a lot of money. Personally, I've spent about $400 on coolers, which is a lot of money to me. I have one Coleman Extreme cooler that I got secondhand, and that's been wonderful. It probably keeps ice for about 3 or 4 days, which is usually enough. And then I also have a Yeti cooler, which I got as a gift from my wife for a birthday, which basically means I spent money for it, right? But it's cool. I mean, once again, I think they're overpriced, but it is going to keep ice for 10 days if you pack it properly. So that's pretty cool. And I might use it on longer trips and hunts in the future. Now, finally, back at home, I have a deep freeze, and this is important to be able to contain all the meat that I harvest. Thankfully, deep freezes are not that expensive secondhand, so I got mine for about $100. It's nearly 8 cubic feet, and I've been able to fit a full bull elk in there and also a large deer. Maybe if you had a huge bull elk, you would need more space, but we've also used it to fit half a cow in it, and it's been great. And that was only $100. Totally worth it for hunting and just everyday use. All right, so from that list of gear alone, the grand total comes out to $2,970. This is an investment I've made to be able to hunt, to have everything I feel like I need. Some of those things I don't even need, right? But I've still paid for them, and they enhance my hunting experience. If any of those items surprised you, the cost, whether high or low, drop a comment and tell me what it is. I'd be interested to hear it. And some people, like I said, are just shocked at how much hunting costs to get into. That also really worries me. Like, I don't want people to feel like hunting is only a rich person's sport or rich person's pursuit. And I don't think it has to be. But when you start looking at how much gear people buy to go hunting sometimes, it can seem overwhelming. And even that, nearly $3,000 that I've spent, that I think is pretty well thought out and somewhat frugal in some ways, that can be a lot of money for someone who's just starting out. All right, so that's a pretty in-depth look at some of my basic hunting gear that I use on almost every hunt. Those aren't the only costs associated with hunting, though. There are also things that you're going to buy every year. So these are annual expenses like ammo and tags and gas, if you want to lump that in. So let's talk about how much each of those cost. So ammo, hunting ammo and practice ammo. This could range anywhere from $60 to $200 for me. If you shoot a lot more, that price is going to go up. I shoot a cheap cartridge. I shoot the Federal PowerShock, the blue stuff in 30-06. It is about $30 for a case of 20 cartridges. That is very inexpensive when it comes to ammo and hunting ammo. So $60 to $200 a year for me just on ammo. It's going to be more if I want to shoot more, or if I want to shoot my handgun, or if I want to shoot more shotgun shells, whatever it is. Now, I also spend about $150 a year on tags. In Idaho, there is a Sportsman's package, and it gives you tags for an elk, a deer, a mountain lion, a wolf, a bear, a turkey. It gives you your hunting license. It also gives you your fishing license and a tracking sheet for catching salmon. All of these things for about $150. That is a steal. That is not true for other states. And if you ever consider hunting out of state, you are going to pay obscenely high prices for tags in some cases. So for example, if I wanted to go over and hunt in Washington, I would have to pay something like $550 for a non-resident hunting license and a non-resident deer tag. That just prices me out. Like, I don't have that amount of money to go and possibly not kill a deer, right? A lot of people can't afford that. So if you're like me, you're going to hunt in-state, and even in-state tags for some people are going to cost more than $150. Now, every year I'm spending a little bit of money on hearing protection, just the little foamies. That's like $8. It might be more if I get a pair of cans, like earmuffs or something. Gas could be a big one. If I'm driving an hour or 2 hours every time I go hunt, and if I'm going around and scouting different places, I could spend an extra $300 a year on gas. And that might not even sound like a lot. It could be more, just depending on how much you drive. What if you're driving to a different state? It's going to be a lot more money. Or just driving to the other side of the state. A lot more money on gas. Wear and tear on my car. This is a big one. I don't have any real way to quantify this. So let's say it's at least $800 a year, and let's say it could be way more. Just depending on your type of car and what type of driving you're doing. I have done some things where I've popped tires when I'm driving around looking for bears, and I've definitely messed up my alignment and probably put a lot of wear and tear on the shocks in my car, all sorts of things that are going to come due if you're driving your car hard and on old logging roads and things like that. So let's say it's at least $800. For me, it's probably even more than that. I recently had a bunch of work done on my car, and I don't want to talk about it. Let's put it that way. So for you, it may be more or less. Another annual fee could be processing fees. If you are successful and you decide to bring your deer or your elk or whatever you've killed to a processor, you're going to have to pay some sort of fee. So in Tennessee, processing was not that expensive. I was killing pretty small deer compared to the deer up here in Idaho. And so you bring it to a processor and they could process it for anywhere from $60 to $100. Now, if you kill a bigger animal, you may spend a lot more than that. So for example, I killed an elk this fall, and I brought about 70 pounds to a processor to get ground up, and then another 15 pounds to get made into jerky. And that cost me about $225 just to get that meat ground up and turned into jerky. If I had brought in the whole elk, like the quarters of the elk and just asked them to take it from there, it would have cost a whole lot more. So that's something you have to factor into your annual expenses. Now, for deer, I'm of the opinion that you don't need to pay a processor. You can just do it yourself. You might not have a way to grind the meat, but you can do a deer as stew meat and steaks, and it will be wonderful. And I don't think you need to pay someone to do that. But once again, it's just something to keep in mind. And then finally, you have to consider if you are going to do anything with the antlers and the skull and the cape of your animal. So let's say you kill a really great mule deer and you want something to remember it. Maybe you go and get it Euro mounted, meaning the skull gets cleaned and bleached and you have the antlers, and it's a really cool looking trophy. I know trophy is like a bad word, right? But it is a trophy and it's a memento of your trip. And in some ways, it's a way to honor the animal as well. So that is going to cost you money. I got a Euro mount of the first elk that I killed this fall, and it cost me about $200. As I started to look into the process of Euro mounting an animal, I get the sense that I got a good deal. And so if you brought it somewhere else, it might cost you more money. But once again, if you kill an animal, you have to think about what you're going to do with it, and that could cost you money as well. And taxidermy is not cheap. Even a Euro mount will cost you a couple $100. And then if you want anything with fur on, that's going to cost you way more. Okay, so from that short list, we've added another $1,883 in annual costs. And this is just an estimate. Once again, it's highly variable. It depends how much you shoot and how much you drive and how much you bring to a processor, all of that. But for me, it could be around, $1,800 a year, just in annual fees and expenses. Okay, so add that on to our last total, which our last total was $2,970. So add those together, and we've got $4,853. That's a lot of money, nearly $5,000. Okay, we haven't even talked about camping gear yet, right? So I'm not going to go through all of my camping gear. A lot of this camping gear I've had since before I started to hunt more seriously. So in some ways, I don't lump it in with my other hunting gear. But let's say you need to buy a stove, a sleeping pad, a tent, a sleeping bag, a headlamp, a first aid kit, some sort of water purification system. That's going to be at least another $1,000, right? And it just depends on the quality of the gear. And if you're getting the most cutting edge, ultralight sleeping bag, or if you're getting the old one from your neighbor's garage sale, right? So we've gone through quite a list of gear. And if you were starting from scratch, say you didn't have any of this gear starting out, you were a new outdoorsman, you're looking at spending over $5,000 if you spend the way that I have. And once again, I don't know if I'm average, below average, but you can use my experience as a data point. Now, let's talk about how much monetary value I have recouped by killing one medium elk this year and one big buck. So altogether, I got from this elk and buck maybe 220 pounds of meat. And if I think about the closest alternative to wild game, I think of grass-fed beef. My wife and I bought half a grass-fed cow last year, or earlier this year actually, and we ended up paying for it about $11 a pound when it was cut and wrapped and delivered to us. So $11 a pound is pretty decent for grass-fed beef. It was somewhat economical. That's a lot of money for ground beef, right? But it's really cheap for steaks and nicer cuts of meat. Now, let's assign a monetary value to Wild the Game. Be careful with this. You can't actually sell Wild the Game legally in the US in most cases, so don't go out and try to sell your elk for a certain monetary value. But for the sake of our thought exercise, we're going to assign Wild the Game a monetary value per pound. And I'm going to say it's worth more than grass-fed beef. I'm going to say it's worth at least $15 a pound. So I harvested, like I said, about 220 pounds of meat this year. 220 times 15 comes out to about $3,300 worth of meat. Now, this doesn't exactly mean I'm going to save $3,300 on my grocery budget, right? Because I probably wouldn't have bought meat for $15 a pound if it was just grass-fed beef. And honestly, even if there was Wild Game on the shelf for $15 a pound, maybe I wouldn't have bought it. But that's an idea of the value I'm getting in meat alone, right? And let's say $15 a pound is too low for Wild Game. Let's say it's really worth $20 a pound. Well, 220 pounds times $20 equals about $4,400 worth of meat. So on the high end, this year, I've recouped maybe $4,400. So that sounds pretty good. Honestly, this may be the first year I've ever come close to actually breaking even in a monetary value sense by hunting. And $4,400 worth of meat, that sounds great to me. The thing is, this has been a banner year. I have never harvested this much meat in a year. In fact, this was the first year I ever killed an elk, and I've hunted elk for 10 years, right? And if I think about last year I killed a turkey, and I did not kill an elk or a deer. And the year before, I was a non-resident in Idaho, and I killed a turkey, but I had a non-resident license and tag, right? So it cost me about $150 for a single turkey. And then the year before that, I was living in Tennessee and I killed 2 Tennessee white-tailed deer. And Tennessee white-tailed deer are not very big. You're looking at 40 to 60 pounds max off of those. And I think those would have been does. So those would have been closer to the 40 pounds of meat. So this has been the best year I've ever had hunting, and I still barely break even when it comes to monetary value. Okay, so hopefully this has been helpful for you to get an idea of what someone might spend on hunting, and even what someone like myself might consider worth it. But really, what does this all mean? Well, it's a problem of endless complexity, right? You need a serious accountant to figure this all out, to see if hunting is actually worth the money. Because we didn't even talk about taking time off work, which is the opportunity cost of hunting. We didn't talk about replacing gear. We didn't talk about the cost of hunting over 10 years. And all of these different things are threads you would kind of have to tease out to give hunting a monetary value. And then you could get to that monetary value and it would be different for every single hunter because different people have different means and they're going to spend more or less money up front, and some people are going to do without things. And so once again, it's just a problem of endless complexity. So what's my conclusion? My conclusion is that only an exceedingly frugal, expert hunter with ample opportunity for success in his home state could make hunting worth the money. And this would mean no buying new rifles every few years, no latest and greatest gear, using boots until they're worn out, and probably passing on the Yeti coolers. And if you could do all those things, and if you were an expert hunter, maybe you would be able to harvest enough meat to recoup the monetary value of what you put into it. So at this point, you might be thinking, well, Samuel, that doesn't really motivate me to get into hunting. You're basically telling me that it's not worth it. But we are obviously overlooking the fact that the value of hunting isn't simply a monetary conversion, right? There's other reasons why we go hunting. And so I'm going to tell you a couple of the reasons why I enjoy hunting and why I think it is 100% worth it, even if it costs you some money. So the first reason is the adventure that you get from hunting. There are so many unique things that I have experienced while hunting that I would not have experienced otherwise. Very few people have been sitting in the woods and had a herd of elk thunder past them at 40 yards. And when I say a herd of elk, I mean 50 plus elk, cows, bulls, everything just running past at full tilt. And it was an incredible experience. Very few people have gone out into the wild and searched for bears and found them in the environments that bears like to live in the early spring as they're coming out of their dens and looking for food. And it's really quite a captivating experience. Also, as a hunter, I have walked through forests that have trees that are so old and so tall that you could ride a horse underneath them. And it's an incredible feeling to look at these giant trees and think about the history and how long they have been there and take in the beauty of the scenery. And it's just something that many people living in cities and even in sort of, natural areas near development are never going to see or experience. I've seen wild animals up close, and I've had weird experiences, like the time I was hunting in Tennessee and a doe came within 12 yards of me and just looked at me and barked at me for about 4 minutes and was stamping its foot and making the strangest noise I've ever heard a deer make. And that's always a funny experience that I look back on that very few people ever are going to experience. And then I've had hard experiences like 12-mile days hunting elk, doing things that I didn't think I could do, doing things that I wouldn't have wanted to do in other circumstances, but we went out and did them and they became incredible memories. So there's all these just adventures that you can have hunting, and it's really hard to put any sort of real price on those. In many ways, they're priceless, right? They are going to become memories. They are going to become stories. They are going to change you as a person. And I think that besides the meat and besides the skill of hunting, the adventure itself is one of the main points of value. Now, I touched on this a moment ago, but another huge reason to go hunting is for personal growth. I can say unequivocally that hunting makes me a better person. And it is because of the challenge. When I go out and hunt, I'm doing something hard that I don't normally do. And you have to become mentally tough. In many ways, I don't think I'm a naturally mentally tough person. But as I persevere in hunting and as I push my limits and do things that I didn't think I could do, I become tougher, and that helps me in other areas of my life, whether it's being more stable and confident in myself, or whether it's being there for other people who need someone mentally tough when life gets hard. When you are being challenged by hunting, you're probably experiencing discomfort. And our modern lives are so comfortable and boring in some ways. And so when you go out hunting and you experience discomfort, you can come back and you just have a much better perspective on how easy your normal life is. And in some ways, it helps you appreciate it. And then also the challenge helps you become more resourceful. And once again, who doesn't want to be more resourceful and be able to make the most of what they have available to them. Another part of personal growth is just the health and fitness aspect of it. Nothing motivates me more to stay healthy and to train than hunting. At this point in my life, I'm not playing organized sports or not running with a running group like a cross-country team or a running club, but I know that the hunting season is going to roll around, and I know that I want to be able to climb that elevation or hike those miles, and I want to be able to pack out an animal. And so I have to stay healthy, and I also want to train and become stronger. And then, of course, there are the mental health benefits of being out in nature. We know that people heal faster when they can see the natural world, whether that's just plants or greenery out their window. We know that there is an effect of the fractals in nature on our psyche, and it's something that we need. And the habitats that we normally live in, like cities, are full of 90-degree angles and concretes, and it doesn't do good for our brains. And so just going out hunting, even if you're not killing animals and being successful, can have a huge positive effect on your mental health. And then the final thing I'll mention is just quality time. If you go out hunting with someone, you are going to learn things about them. You are likely going to grow closer, unless you really hate them, then maybe you'll grow further apart. But likely you'll grow closer. You will have some time where you're not looking at your phone. You have a challenge to work on together. It's a great thing for family, fathers and sons. It's a great thing for friends. And in many ways, I just can't think of a better way to spend your time with someone than going out hunting. So when it comes down to it, I firmly believe that hunting is worth the cost and the effort. And if you've never been hunting before, you should definitely try it. And if you're just getting into it, realize that even though you are paying a lot of money up front and you might not be recouping that in a monetary value, you are getting value out of it in all these different ways. And even on those hunts where you're out there and you're thinking, man, what am I doing? I'm not seeing animals. I'm not going to be successful. You are still gaining benefits from hunting just by being out in nature, just by challenging yourself, just by engaging in personal growth. And all of these things make hunting a valuable pursuit. I think that's a good place to end it for today. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will catch you on the next one.